Terminator, Dark Fate. Terminator Dark Fate was directed by Tim Miller and stars Linda Hamilton, Mackenzie Davis, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Natalia Reyes, and is the story of Sarah Connor and a hybrid cyborg human who now must protect a young girl from a newly modified liquid Terminator from the future. And according to reports published before this film's release, Edward Furlong as John Connor is also in the movie. So we can all look forward to that. I saw this film last Tuesday, actually, but I waited as long as I did to review it because I really could not see myself reviewing this movie without talking about spoilers, because there's so many things I want to discuss, and so I'm going to wait until after my grade. If you haven't seen the film yet this weekend and you don't want to know any spoilers, I understand that. So I'm going to talk about the movie, and then after I give my grade, I'm going to talk about some other things. The Terminator franchise has basically been a mediocre, bland pile of crap since Terminator 2. The first two films were amazing, and I still love them, but after that, they've all been pretty disposable, and Genesis was rather embarrassing. So with James Cameron returning as a producer and Tim Miller directing, Linda Hamilton coming back as Sarah Connor, it felt like there was something happening. It felt like there were possibilities here. And while this movie is competently helmed and the action sequences can be enjoyable to watch, and I suppose as an action movie only, it's not too bad. As a Terminator movie, I thought this was awful. And I think that's where this movie is going to divide viewers, because I understand that they're probably trying to make a new Terminator movie for a new generation of fans who don't give a shit about the old ones, but that also doesn't make sense, because you have Schwarzenegger back, and you have Linda Hamilton back, and you have James Cameron back. So why aren't you trying to honor the legacy of the first two films? Maybe they actually were. Maybe they genuinely had no idea they were making a movie that took a giant shit all over the legacy of the first two. Maybe they really thought they were actually honoring them, but it really doesn't feel like they were. Man, I want to talk about spoilers. Holy shit. I'll wait. Let's push aside my gripes and be realistic. Mackenzie Davis is really good in this movie. I thought she was really badass, and I liked her character quite a bit. She dedicated a lot of physicality to this role, and I thought she was wonderful in the movie. Linda Hamilton is by far my favorite part of the whole film. She is awesome. She's great as this character, and she totally fits in those boots once again all these years later. She added a lot to the movie, and I loved seeing her back, and despite the fact that I didn't love what they did with Arnold Schwarzenegger's storyline, I thought he was really funny in the movie. It's weird because, like, I didn't love what they were doing with the character, but I undeniably laughed many times. But if you've seen the trailers, you know that they find him in a cabin in the woods. So I don't really think it's much of a spoiler to say that this character has sort of settled down, which is odd. We'll talk about that after the grade. As I stated, the action sequences are propulsive. There's many of them, and it does feel like the movie moves consistently, although I thought it dragged considerably during the middle of the film. A lot of the action sequences feel a bit too tight, and it just doesn't feel real. I'm gonna compare them to movies that were made in the 80s and the early 90s, probably more than you might want me to do in this video, but I think it's kind of necessary. Why are these films made so many years ago so much better? Why do they look so much better? Because they're really fucking happening. And so much of this shit in this movie, even some of the stuff that is actually happening, like car crashes, there's a shiny fake filter over everything, and I just didn't buy anything that was happening. The thing that just bugged me about this movie is that it really is a recycled Terminator 2 plot. There's a few extra little character beats that are added, but this series, once again, cannot figure out how to be a series without somebody protecting somebody from another Terminator. It's the same plot. I don't understand why this series can't figure out how to tell a story that doesn't involve the Connors or Arnold Schwarzenegger. Terminator Salvation is actually the closest that they've ever got to doing that, which is one of the reasons I respect that movie more than most Terminator sequels, even though I don't love it. Look, I can't go on any longer without talking about some of my spoiler issues, so I'm just going to grade this film. I'm going to give Terminator Dark Fate a C. Look, that's the same grade I gave Genesis. I think this movie is better than Genesis, because Mackenzie Davis and Linda Hamilton and Schwarzenegger are all good in the movie, and I liked these characters. I liked seeing them on screen, and the action was better and better directed than in Genesis. It's the story here, guys, the script, everything about it just really tanked this movie for me and got it to a point where I want to, as a Terminator fan, just be like, this is like a D plus. But I'm being realistic, okay? This is a competently made, for the most part, action movie. So we're going to get into spoilers. When the movie begins, you may have heard this already, there is a de-aged John Connor and a de-aged Sarah Connor. Another Terminator shows up while they're sitting at some restaurant somewhere and just fucking kills John Connor right there, shoots him, and he's dead. They pulled an Alien 3. We watched Aliens, we got attached to Hicks and Newt, we understood this family dynamic that was being built, and then David Fincher, in all of his brilliance, came in and said, no, I don't want to deal with that. I'm going to tell my own story. And while I respect elements of Alien 3, that was a disservice to the characters. And it makes Aliens feel less important. It just kind of makes you feel like, oh, well, I'm glad you got off that place, but you're just going to fucking die soon here in a minute. And that's exactly how I feel about the ending of Terminator 2 now. All of the sacrifices made, the important mission to protect John Connor and destroy Skynet, all of that doesn't seem to matter because he's just going to fucking die, and this new thing called Legion is going to shoot up and suddenly take over the world, and now this is the real problem. This is the biggest issue I have with the Terminator franchise. The timeline is royally fucked. And this happens a lot when you have time travel in movies. It's very difficult to pull off correctly. It's why not a lot of filmmakers do it, because you have so much now that's happening, and it's really impossible to figure it out. I'm sure there's a website somewhere that's going to explain it perfectly, but even when they explain it, it's just going to be like a summary of events. You're not actually going to be able to make any sense of it. Now, I'm not the kind of person that gets so attached to characters in films that I love that can't also appreciate something new, a new attempt at certain things, a new attempt to take characters in a direction and a risk. I actually am okay with that, which is why that first scene in Terminator Dark Fate did not piss me off, because I was waiting for the film to justify its existence. I figured, okay, if they're going to do that, they got a reason. Actually, they don't. This new character, Danny, is the new one they're trying to protect. There's even a line in the film where Sarah Connor says, and I'm paraphrasing, that she's the new John Connor. It was so obvious and on the nose that it actually made me cringe. So they're not actually justifying it. They're just saying, hey, you know that storyline that we all know and love? Doesn't fucking matter. We're going to replace it with a blueprint of it, just with a different character now, which I found extremely convoluted, boring, and unnecessary. Now, Arnold Schwarzenegger in the film plays the Terminator that killed John Connor. He's older now. His skin has aged, as a Terminator's skin does, and he's kind of sad about it. And he has settled down and started a family. Sarah Connor asks him, like, does your wife ever notice that you weigh like 400 pounds? And he's like, our relationship isn't physical. It's like, that's actually kind of fucking funny. He installs drapes, which is also very funny. And there are some lines he has that are great. And he is great in the movie. I just don't really buy it. The series has set up that this just doesn't happen. You can teach a Terminator things by switching the right shit in their head, as shown in one of the scenes in Terminator 2. But again, I waited for them to justify that opening scene where they killed John Connor. The idea that the Terminator that does it decides, I feel bad about that, and I wish I hadn't, to me that doesn't justify it. It's an interesting idea to explore, an AI with a conscience that decides they're a little self-aware and just wants to fucking install drapes. I'm all for that weird fucking bizarre idea, but I just don't think the film pulled it off. I thought this was a major missed opportunity. To me, it felt like the studios were trying to make a Marvel movie. A lot of these big budget action films nowadays are trying to be like the MCU, and they really shouldn't. The Terminator films, at least the first two, felt sort of like hybrids between horror and science fiction, especially the first one, with Arnold being this unstoppable force that would just fucking rip you apart if you gave him the opportunity. Now they just feel so safe. Even though this is rated R, there's nothing about it that feels dangerous. It's just bloody. Side note though, at the screening on Tuesday, two really cool viewers came up to me and you guys asked me for a selfie, and I promised you one after the movie. I sat through the credits. I looked for you everywhere. Couldn't find you. Where'd you guys go? I was looking for you. I hope I can see you guys at another screening. If I do, say hi. I'll get you that photo. Guys, thank you so much as always for watching. Look forward to more reviews very soon. And if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.